So hello and welcome to the Maths Guide, and we're going to be looking today at reversing getting a percentage of something. Now this is something that we did at the start of the week. We saw that when we had a sum of money and it was increased by 12.5%, we had the original amount, we added on 12.5% so that we had 112.5% of the original amount, which in this particular question we said was 180. So I went through this on Monday. So the one of the ways that you can do this is the unitary method. We have 112.5% of the original amount. We find 1% of the original amount and we get 100% of the original amount, and that gives us what we are looking for. Yesterday, or the second day of this week, we looked at finding the percentage. We looked at finding a question where we were told the original amount and told it was increased by a certain amount. So yesterday we had the original amount, for example, €160. We were told it was increased by 12.5%. So we now had 112, we now wanted 112.5% of the original amount, which is of 160. We wrote it as a decimal, 1.125 multiplied by 160. So to get 112.5% of 160, we saw yesterday that we just go 1.125 multiplied by 160, and that will give you 180. Today, we're going to go back to the original question. We're going to be told a sum of money is increased by 12.5%. It now is €180. And we want to find out how we go back to the original. Well, we know that 112.5% of the original amount, which we're trying to find, is 180. The way we did this last day was we found 1% and then we found 100%, which is called the unitary method. The way I'd like you to have a go at this question today is to realize, what did we do here? We multiplied by 1.125 to get the answer. So in one step, multiply by 1.125 to get the answer. And we want to do the reverse of that. So what is the reverse of multiplying by 1.125? The answer is divide by 1.125. And that will give us 100% of the original is 180 divided by 1.125. Okay, so let's have a look at what we did at the start of the week. We found 1% by dividing by 112.5. We found 100% by multiplying by 100. So we divided by 112.5 and multiplied by 100. Or we could say, what is that in one step? Well, dividing, if I have some amount, divided by 112.5 and multiplied by 100, that is the same. That's the same as saying that amount divided by 1.125. So instead of dividing by a big number and multiplying by a big number, we divide by a small number and get our answer directly. So this is the direct way of doing what we did here. You still need to realize that you had an original amount. You now have 112.5% of the original amount. You need to think, what did we do in a single step? In a single step, we multiplied by 1.125. So now in a single step, we're going to divide by 1.125 to get the original amount. Okay, so that's just what you do. It's the same questions basically, but a slightly different way of doing it so that you understand how to do these questions in a single step instead of using the unitary method. So it's just something to practice. Okay, so the worksheets again are attached in the description, and if you're on the course, the questions are directly available there.